Can everybody please take their seats? We're going to start the program. Good afternoon, everyone. Please take your seats. We're going to start the program. The governor's here. Thank you all for coming. Please take your seats. Tough crowd. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start the program, I want to recognize a few individuals who've joined us today. A great friend of our state and our city, the former State Comptroller Carl McCall. Carl, thank you for joining us. Speaking of controllers, we also have the New York City Comptroller, Scott Stringer. Scott, thank you. Congratulations. Port Authority Executive Director Pat Foy. Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer. District Attorneys Robert Johnson and Cy Vance, and also District Attorney Kathleen Rice from Nassau County. Thank you. We also have many city commissioners here. We're so happy that you've joined us. And from Labor, our good friend Gary LaBarbera and Randy Herman, who's the first Vice President of the Council of School Supervisors and Administrators. Also, we have with us our good friend, a man who's really dedicated to Lower Manhattan, Joe Daniels, the president of the 9/11 Memorial Museum. And very excited that Jessica Lappin has joined us today. She is a former city council member who is now the president of the Downtown Alliance. Jessica, good luck. And also her boss and former secretary to Governor Rockefeller, Bobby Douglas, is here with us also. So thank you. Unfortunately, John McAvoy, who's the CEO of Con Ed, could not be with us today. Obviously, he's busy uptown. But we are very excited that we've been joined this morning, or this afternoon, by the principal and two students from a very innovative school that Con Ed has created called Energy Tech. It's a public school that provides graduates with both a high school diploma and an associate's degree after 6 years of study in electrical engineering and energy systems. Energy Tech provides our city's kids with the skills they need to join the energy workforce, and the school is a model for innovation in education. Please join me in recognizing Energy Tech Principal Hope Barter and her two students, Arthur Roha and Rashim Singh. Please stand up. Here they are. Thank you for joining us. And thank all of you for coming here today. It's very exciting to have our good friend, the governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo, coming to speak at Abney. And he also has with him today his economic development team, but more importantly, he has with him his special advisor to the board of the Empire State Development Corporation and advisor to the state of New York, John Mack, who I will introduce in 1 second. John, thank you for being here. Also with us is Secretary to the Governor, Larry Schwartz, State Director of Operations, Howard Glazer, Empire State Development President and CEO, Ken Adams, Startup New York Executive Vice President, Leslie Watley. So thank you all for being here. It is a true pleasure for me to introduce and welcome our governor and John. The governor has done so much for our state over the last 5 years, from marriage equality to streamlining the government process to passing four on-time budgets and hopefully a fifth very soon, and getting our state's fiscal house in order. All New Yorkers should be proud to call you our governor. Since assuming office in 2011 as the 56th governor, Governor Cuomo has been a leader on major issues that has demonstrated to the country, and for that matter, the world, that New York is open to all and open for business. Furthermore, our state remains a trailblazer in global culture, investment, and innovation. Governor, we are grateful for your leadership and dedication to New York, as well as your ongoing commitment to attracting and retaining jobs, protecting and expanding the economic drivers of our state, and ensuring that our Empire State remains the global, competitive, and universally accepted place to do business and for people to seek opportunities. As I mentioned before, the governor has put together an amazing team, including our first speaker, John Mack. John currently serves as the senior advisor to Morgan Stanley. He was chairman until 2011 at Morgan Stanley, and before that, CEO. Last year, the governor tapped John to serve the state and advise on various economic development programs and issues, including Startup New York, to help grow New York's economy and make the state a more attractive place to do business. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Abney, John Mack.
It's always disconcerting when the speaker who introduces you looks at you and says, good luck. So the first thing I want to say, people ask me, why did you do this? You've retired, you got kind of the easy life, now you're jumping in to get involved with economic development, work with the governor's team. And I remember when I had to be in the 6th grade, 5th grade, grew up in North Carolina. Governor Hodges started something called the Research Triangle. It was located between Duke University, North Carolina University, and NC State. And what developed out of that, it was a real economic zone. And if you go through the latest financial crisis and turn down the economy in that region and job creation has been growing, not getting smaller or getting shrinking. Real estate prices have gone up. So when I met with the governor and he talked about his vision and the vision of locating industry and businesses around the SUNY campuses, around some of the educational facilities, where we can tap into what they're doing at the University of Buffalo or what they're doing at SUNY Albany or what they're doing at Stony Brook on Long Island, I said, this really resonates with me. And if you think back in 2011 when he came into this job, we were in tough shape. And I think to have the focus of our leader, our governor, to help business, to be a partner with business, to develop economic strength in this state is significant. And one of the first things he did, I think, is began cutting taxes. And we've seen our taxes from 2011 go down. I was just with him at a breakfast, Republicans for Governor Cuomo. He talked about property taxes. Talked about in the county that I live in, it has the highest property tax, I think, in the country, in Westchester County. Talk about the synergies that could be done and how we could get that tax base down by working more closely with other cities and towns in the Westchester County, but all across the state, not just in Westchester. So it was very easy for me to say, Andrew, I would like to do this. Just let me know when I step out of bounds. So far, I've been lucky. I haven't stepped out of bounds. But just to give you an example of what the governor has done. As many of you know, I've been very active in New York Presbyterian Hospital. And one of the things we've been talking about, and not just our hospital that I'm involved with, the medical schools and other hospitals, is a genome center. And it's gotten off the ground. And one of the reasons it's gotten off the ground, clearly we've picked good leadership in Dr. Darnell, but what the governor did. The governor was able to say, let's go to Buffalo where we have all these new laboratories, and you do some of your work there. I will give you some funding to help you get started. And here in Manhattan, we're doing the same thing and building out our genome center. So you have a real partnership. You know, one of the things you talk about in New York is upstate and downstate. So here we have Buffalo is going to be an integral part of genome research and science. And here we have it down here in the New York area, New York City area, doing a similar thing with research. So I think with the governor's leadership, he really got that moving and got it off the ground. The other thing that clearly y'all have heard about, we see it on TV a great deal, is Startup New York. When the governor spoke to me about that, how do we get business to think about coming to New York and giving the breaks and the assistance we will give them? So one of the first things we did, as I said to the governor, let's go see the investment banks. They talk to CEOs, CFOs all around the country. And if you're a banker, one of the things you're trying to do is show your client that you think differently than the next person at another firm. So if we show, if I were at one of the banks, we'll pick Morgan Stanley as an example. If we were at one of the banks and I'm covering Pfizer, and Pfizer wants to grow and build out their research facility or their laboratory, if we can show them an economic advantage by doing it around one of the SUNY campuses in Albany, in Rochester, in Buffalo, the savings they will get. I mean, think about it. In businesses that can do this, the governor and the state has passed 10 years of no New York State taxes. Your employees will pay no income tax to the state for 5 years. And there are other benefits that Startup New York will give. So here we are, we've got a great number of real estate individuals here. There have been 2 business deals that I've been involved with. One of them is in real estate in the cold storage business. And now they've just done a merger. They're the number 2 cold storage in the country. So I said to the CEO, have you thought about having one of your distribution centers in New York? He said, no, we're in New Jersey or Pennsylvania. I said, well, let me tell you what New York State will do with you in Startup New York. The next thing I heard from him, have Leslie Watley call me. We want to see if we can do something there. So when you talk to small tech companies, you talk to young entrepreneurs who are starting businesses, if we can get them to relocate in these areas that the governor has focused on, they will get these breaks, and as a result, we'll end up creating jobs, and we'll have a very strong economic, I think, resiliency to the vagaries of the market. So that's a long story why I'm doing this, but that's just one reason. The other reason, I think Governor Cuomo is a good leader. I like working with him, and I like people who can get things done. Governor Cuomo, if I can ask you to come up, and I can get off the stage, and I hope good luck went well.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. First to Bill Rudin and Abney, who does such a great job for this city and this state in so many ways. Let's give them a round of applause. To John Mack, I want to thank him very much for stepping up and doing his public duty in a very difficult time, in a very challenging area. I hope some of you have been inspired by his example, and you will soon be stepping forward to do your public duty. If you are not inspired, I hope you are embarrassed that a boy from North Carolina has stepped up, and so many New Yorkers have not yet stepped up. We don't pay a lot in terms of compensation, but I am told that when you get to the pearly gates, you get 3 points extra credit for public service. That's what I'm told. Not that anyone in this room needs the extra credit, I'm sure. But John has been really extraordinary. His credibility, his experience has been an incredible asset for the state of New York, and I want to thank him again for taking the time and doing this. You heard them acknowledged, but any successful organization, it really is about the team and the concept of team and people who work together, but I've been blessed with an extraordinary team of professionals who work harder for the people of the state of New York than I believe any team ever assembled before. They're headed by Secretary Larry Schwartz. So let's give them another round of applause. To all the elected officials, to all the friends who are here today, I'd like to speak to you about the state budget today. The state budget is timely. You'll be hearing it discussed over the next 2 weeks. The state Senate and the state Assembly just passed their one-house resolutions, basically their version of the budget. Ideally, the budget is passed by April 1, so that means it's going to be a very intense 2 weeks. This budget is probably the most complex budget that I've done over the past 3 years. There are a lot of issues that are on the table, and the budget is the best mechanism to resolve issues. So we're looking to get all the current issues that have been discussed absorbed into the budget. We call it Building on Success because we've had a good 3 years, and we want to keep it going. There's an old saying, you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been. As was alluded to by both Bill and John, when we began the journey 3 years ago, the once great state of New York was literally a joke on late-night TV. There were scandals, there were indictments, there was dysfunction. And even worse, it wasn't just about the problem of the moment. There were fundamental structural problems that were building in the state for many, many years. New York State was gridlock on steroids. Washington thinks they know gridlock. We knew it first. We invented the real gridlock. They're a mere copy of gridlock. Past 30 years, 23 budgets have been late, an average of 50 days. Why does gridlock happen at the time of the budget, whether it's in the state or Washington? Because the budget is where the money is. That's why, right? Why did Willie Sutton rob banks? That's where the money is. And that's where the ability to cooperate or the inability to cooperate is really manifest. The other structural problem was New York State. The spending was out of control and had been out of control for a long, long time, over the past 50 years. If you spend a lot, you tax a lot, and we did tax a lot. And as a result, our taxes became the highest in the nation. And we were paying the price, because when you're the highest tax state in the nation, people will leave. That is the simple and inexcusable logic. There is a tipping point. You know, for years people have said, well, New York, we have so many assets, it's so great, nobody could leave. There is a point at which they will leave. You tax them too much, the regulations become too tough, the economy slows, people will leave. Florida is not that far away anymore. Somehow it got closer over the years. Travel is easier, there's more technology, people can work from home a few days a week. 180 days, the residency determination, you can figure out if you really want to. And if you make it too expensive and too burdensome, more and more people will find ways to do that. There's a famous saying, New York State has no future as the tax capital of the nation. You know who said that famous saying? Me. But that was yesterday, and this is today, and it is a different day. Job one for us was to control spending. And this is all you need to know about the state of New York and how we got here. This is over the past 50 years, New York State spent literally more than New Yorkers were making. Now, I have 3 young ladies at home, 3 teenagers, and we're trying to learn the early lessons of economics. And I'm working on the basic lesson of you can't spend more than you make. The outflow must equal the inflow, right? There has to be a balance to the system. That's true unless you're the state of New York. Then you can literally spend more money than you are making. And that's what we did for 50 years. Forget the rate of inflation. We were nowhere near that. We were actually spending more than the increase in personal incomes and doing it for a long time. And it wasn't about politics. You know, you go through election cycles and they say, well, if we elected a Republican, if we elected a Democrat, it wouldn't happen. Over 50 years, you've had Republican governors, Democratic governors, you've had Republicans head of the Senate, Democrats head of the Senate. It didn't matter. It wasn't about politics. It was about the special interests that were controlling Albany and the desire to spend more money. We have gotten control of spending, and we did it in a big way. These are the past average spending for 10 years. Rockefeller Wilson spent about 11%. Governor Rockefeller was a big builder. The SUNY system all across the upstate New York, the World Trade Centers were Governor Nelson Rockefeller. Mario Cuomo, a good fellow, I'm close to his wife, really 6.9% over his 12 years. George Pataki, 5.2% per year over his 12 years. Our spending has literally been below 1% a year over the first three, and this budget also will hold it at less than 1 point a year. This is in no way to be read as a criticism of my father. 6.9% is nice too, I want you to know. Not only did we reduce spending, but we also reduced the size of government itself. Our government at 118,000 employees is the smallest government has been in over 50 years. We renegotiated our labor contracts to 3 zeros, and the unions agreed to pay a percentage of health care, saving us more than $1 billion and setting a standard for the state of New York. We reformed the pension system, which is the greatest structural cost, which if we don't do something about long-term pensions, it could bankrupt the governments all across this country. We reformed our pension system and saved $80 billion. We brought down the level of state debt at the same time. Some state governments, you can reduce spending, but you increase the debt. You save with one hand, you increase with the other. We've actually reduced the amount of debt we average per year dramatically. And the old adage is true. If you spend less, you can tax less. And as John Mack said, we taxed less. Every New Yorker in the state pays a lower income tax rate than the day they did I was elected, period. Every New Yorker pays a lower income tax rate. Up to $300,000, what they now call the middle class, up to $300,000, pays the lowest tax rate in 60 years, believe it or not. And the reduction in spending and the reduction in taxes is working. The arrows are all pointing in the right direction. Spending is down, taxes is down, unemployment is down, and the number of jobs is up. 3 years ago, we had a $10 billion surplus, which they said was impossible to deal with. In 3 years, we've gone from a $10 billion deficit to a $2 billion surplus, believe it or not. I wouldn't have believed that we could have turned it around as quickly as we did. For this year, the basic point is just to keep it going, just to keep the arrows pointed in the right direction. This is an election year. I don't know if you noticed. Not that I'm asking you anything, just noting a fact that it is an election year. But we wanted to make sure we kept the politics out of it. We wanted to keep our tax cut program going. So we started by asking former Governor George Pataki and former Controller Carl McCall to head a commission. Former Governor George Pataki, as you know, is a Republican. Former Controller Carl McCall is a Democrat. We wanted that bipartisan balance. We charged them to come up with the next iteration of tax cuts for the state of New York that was balanced and non-controversial. Because we believe the budget cuts, tax cuts are working for the state as an economic development vehicle. Now, we had just reduced the personal income tax So the commission came back and recommended a cut in the corporate income tax rate from 7.1 to 6.5. They reduce the income tax rate for upstate manufacturers to 0. Remember, upstate economy has lagged the New York City economy. It has for decades and decades. And this is not only one state from a moral point of view, it's one state from an economic point of view. We're one balance sheet. And if upstate New York is not doing well, downstate is going to have to subsidize upstate. So it's in everyone's best interest to make sure upstate New York is economically viable. It reduces the estate tax from 16 to 10 and raises the threshold in line to the federal exemption. This, I believe, will make us money in the long term because we have people who are leaving this state to die. They're leaving this state when they get near that point because the estate tax is so high, they don't want to charge their children that amount of money for them staying in the state of New York, and this is long overdue in my opinion. What's called a circuit breaker, a reduction for low-income families for property tax relief, a 20% manufacturer's property tax credit, and a freeze for property taxes, which I'll discuss more in a moment. The largest single tax in the state is the property tax. People think it's the personal income tax or the corporate income tax. It's not an income tax. It's the property tax. You don't feel it in New York City if you're a residential owner. You feel it if you're a commercial owner, by the way. But we collect about $50 billion in the property tax, about $40 billion in the income tax. However you look at it, it is the single most oppressive tax in this state, far and away. And it's one of the highest taxes in the nation, literally. Westchester County, as John said, highest property taxes in the United States of America, paid in Westchester County, second in Nassau. By percentage of home value, the upstate counties, the homes are worth less money, but by percentage of the home value, they're paying the highest property tax, and they're probably in the least position to be able to afford it. But that's what's one of the main problems for upstate New York. Why are the property taxes so high? We have too many governments. We have 10,500 local governments. And these are overlapping, and they are duplicative, and they are special districts and lighting districts and fire districts and sewer districts and refuge districts and another district just to count the other districts. It is a plethora of bureaucracy, each one with its own fiefdom, with its own patronage, each one with its own cost of operating that is literally staggering. We've reduced the amount that they can raise their taxes to 2%. We have a property tax cap. But there's so many of them that whatever the annual reduction, it winds up being a staggering cost. What we want to say this year is the state will freeze the property taxes in those communities if the local communities agree to work together and come up with a cost-sharing plan where they save a point a year for 3 years. Just asking the local governments, do what everyone else has done in America. Work to find savings, work with a local and neighboring jurisdiction to find economies of scale, back office, fleet management, employees, etc. Not every government has to do everything. Startup New York is the main thrust for our economic development program. It's what John has been promoting for us all across the state. It is as simple as he said, no taxes for 10 years. It builds on two former economic development programs. Jack Kemp, God rest his soul, who was a HUD secretary before I was, former congressman from Buffalo, talked about enterprise zones, which was a concept of reduced taxation regulation in a geographic zone would lure business. Bill Clinton, we had empowerment zones. Startup zones are very simple, and they learn from both, but they're simpler. No taxes for 10 years, period. No state tax, no income tax, no property tax, no sales tax, not for the owner of the company, not for the employees, and there are no technical caveats that the business must do this, must do this. The only caveat is they're new jobs. new jobs to the state of New York, either expansion jobs from a company within or a company moves from outside. There are 64 zones, startup zones all around the state. There are some in downstate New York. There are some in the city. They're in the outer boroughs. We have one in Harlem. We have them on Long Island. These are zones that are large enough to accommodate almost certainly any business that would want to move into a zone. They're associated with colleges, public colleges, private colleges, so you have an academic component, a training component, and they are all across upstate New York also, primarily upstate because that's where we're focusing on jump-starting business. John's mission this year is not just to promote it within the state. We believe we have a capacity to attract businesses internationally on this program because it is that simple and attractive, and that's what we're going to be doing this year. The best long-term economic development strategy is the best education system. Common Core is a new curriculum that is being introduced into our public schools. It's the right way to go. 45 states have it. It was introduced rather quickly, and it's caused a lot of anxiety. This year, through the budget, we're looking to continue the advancement of Common Core, but not count the test scores against the students for a couple of years while they actually adjust to it. The state has long believed in pre-K as the single best educational reform you can do. Any education expert you talk to will say the same thing. Get them when they're young, and the younger the minds, the more open, the more fertile. We had kindergarten. We want to start pre-K, pre-kindergarten for 4-year-olds. We want it statewide. The state will pay for it. It was actually started by the Assembly when George Pataki was governor. I called for an expansion statewide. The mayor of the city of New York is very aggressive on universal pre-K. I'm very aggressive on it. But I want it not just for the city children, not just for the children of Manhattan. I want it for the children of Buffalo and the children of Rochester and the children of Syracuse, because if it's good enough for the children of Manhattan, we should have it for all our children. And rather than any one city having to come up with a tax to pay for it, the state will pay for it because it's a fairer way of doing it. This mayor's proposal. So we'll be in a place where the state can pay for whatever funding a local city needs. They'll give us a plan. As fast as they can operationalize it, we will be able to fund it. We increase education funding about 5%, and I'm proposing a $2 billion initiative for technology in our public schools, because that is the future, and getting the right technology into the public schools is everything. And we propose a $2 billion bond initiative to do that. Charter schools, while they are not big in terms of numbers of students they now serve, traditional public schools are well over 90% of the population of students. I think they are vitally important. They are places of innovation. They are places of creativity. Some charter schools have done truly amazing work. Some have not been as good, but they are trying new ideas in a very desperate area, which is inner city communities where public schools have been failing for a long time. I think it's essential that the charter movement be protected and the charter movement be supported and the charter movement grow. And we will do that this year. I'm a strong believer in teacher evaluations. The state was supposed to implement teacher evaluations 7 years ago when it qualified for the Race to the Top money. It hasn't really happened. It's been difficult to implement just because the local districts, the teachers, are highly concerned about the evaluations. I think they're essential. They're not punitive. Find out who are the low-performing teachers and let's get them the help they need to improve. And let's have a bonus system for the high-performing teachers, so those teachers who want to work hard, who want to achieve, we recognize that achievement and we reward it with bonuses. We have an affordable housing crisis. I want to get back into the business big time. I partnered with Mayor Bill de Blasio when he was just Bill de Blasio. When we worked at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, it's something we worked on together. I think it's something that we can work on together again. And we commit $100 million to building affordable housing in the city of New York. The next challenge for the next generation is going to be, in my opinion, extreme weather and the changes that it brings. I think Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy, where I was as involved in it as anyone, and I saw it up close and personal as anyone in this room, where Joe Loda and I happened to wind up at the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel on some cosmic reality, watching the tunnel fill with the Hudson River that had overflowed the banks, and just standing and watching powerless as the water just flooded in. I think in some ways we were lucky. It could have been a lot worse. But I don't want to try to be lucky twice. I want to be smart, and let smart be what happens the second time. It's not just a New York City issue. It's a downstate issue. 90% of New Yorkers live within 5 miles. It's Brooklyn, it's Queens, it's Nassau, it's Suffolk, it's up the Hudson River to the Hudson Valley communities. Our transit system is extraordinarily vulnerable. When we designed Manhattan, we all talk about how high we built. The true engineering marvel was how deep we built. You have Manhattan going down 10 stories, 15 stories in some places. There was no provision made for flooding the infrastructure. And when we put in the subway system, et cetera, we didn't even design closures. So if you have water coming over the top of Manhattan, it floods underneath. It goes through all those grates into the subway system. It goes right down the stairwells. So it's a totally different way of preparing Manhattan, and the transit system is probably the first place. That large white ball you see there is an experimental plug that we're trying, where how do you stop a tunnel, plug a tunnel, so the water can't enter the tunnel. Literally, they're trying an inflatable plug in this case. But there's going to be a massive reconstruction of our subway system on all facets of it, from the LIRR to Metro North to the bridges and tunnels. We had damage in almost every facet of the system, and we've re-engineered almost every facet of the system. We're also talking about a new spur for Metro North, which would actually add 4 new stations in the Bronx, which is exciting because it would make the Bronx much more accessible to Manhattan and open up parts of the Bronx. We're talking about a smart grid and a microgrid system. Not every community has to be on the same electrical system so that when one system goes down, everybody goes down. Smart grid overall and microgrid systems, so neighborhoods, projects, communities, Battery Park City stayed illuminated because they had their own system. We're installing these all through the downstate New York. We're putting our own weather system in place. You know, we joke about the weatherman and sometimes how inaccurate the weather forecast is. We had a storm, Hurricane Irene, they were forecasting, and they were forecasting that it was going to hit New York City. It was coming up the coast and it was going to hit New York, so we redeployed all our assets from all across the state, all down to New York City. And we put out the call, all the Buffalo trucks, all the trucks from the North Country, everybody in New York City. Storm was coming, the storm was coming, storm misses New York City. Mike Bloomberg has a press conference. Thank God, God is good, missed New York City. We have all the equipment, missed New York City. Phone rings, the storm is hitting upstate New York, missed New York City, it's going directly for upstate New York. Everybody back in the trucks, upstate New York. Knowing what weather is going to hit and where it's going to hit is vitally important. And the states have their own weather detection system. And we have to have the best in the country, and we're going to be putting in that technology. We also learned lessons from Hurricane Sandy, how when you disrupt the fuel delivery system, even by one day, caused a 2-week backup at the gas pumps. I don't know if you remember, for all of downstate. We're going to start our first emergency evacuation system, emergency evacuation routes, with gas stations on those routes that have backup power so they can get the fuel out of the tanks. And we're also setting up the first ever strategic fuel reserves for a state through the Long Island downstate area. Coastal protection, we're spending $1 billion putting back wetlands, putting back oyster beds, really putting back what Mother Nature had provided in the first place. We're spending money taking homes, removing homes from wetlands where they shouldn't have been built in the first place, and then restoring the wetland as the barrier. We have a new wireless emergency alert system that was just approved by the feds. We're going to have the first college for emergency management. They have programs for emergency management, but there is no college in the country for emergency management. We're going to have it right here in the state of New York as part of the SUNY system for emergency preparedness, homeland security, and cybersecurity. And we've already recruited NYPD former Commissioner Ray Kelly to be a special advisor. We're going to create a citizen responder corps, so citizens themselves will have the right training and the right equipment, so they'll have more ease about their knowledge and their capacity. We're replacing 100 bridges statewide, over 1,000 projects totaling $16 billion. What's nice about that is it's the funding that we received from Washington by a special appropriation, so it's not state dollars. It's going to be the most massive rebuilding program the state has ever taken, and we'll be doing more construction over these past 3 years than we have done in modern political history in the state of New York, and we need it. So in short, my friends, the government is working. Gridlock is ended. Government is functioning. Over the past 3 years, we've had 3 on-time balanced budgets. This year, if we get it done by April 1st, knock wood, not to jinx us, will be the 4th on-time budget. 4th on-time budget hasn't been done in over 40 years. Last time it was done, Governor Nelson Rockefeller, Speaker Perry Duryea, and the majority leader was Earl Bridges. I'll tell you how long ago that was. I don't even know who Earl Bridges is. But I think he became an actor later on in life. And when the government works smarter, it's better for the state. The two are connected. And the functionality of the government is linked to the functionality of the state. And it's not that the government is working better. It's that the state is working better. And the proof is in the numbers. 426,000 new jobs over the past 3 years. Listen to this, we are number 2 in job creation in the nation since the recession. Number 2 in the nation. New York City unemployment rate is down. Unemployment is down in every region of the state of New York, including upstate. The upstate unemployment rate dropped, in the most recent numbers, dropped 8.4 to 6.4, the single biggest one-year drop in recorded history for upstate New York. Exports are up 15%. We have a positive outlook from all 3 rating agencies when they're at a time when they're very tough on governments. We want to keep the momentum going. Our slogan after Sandy is building back better, right? Not just building back, not just rebuilding, not just replacing, but to make it better than it was. Make it better than it was. That's the spirit of New York. How do we make it better? They call us aggressive. They call us visionary. How do we make it better? That's what we're trying to do with the state after Sandy. That's what Abney set out to do, literally make New York better. Association for a Better New York after the fiscal crisis. in the 70s. And that is really the mission of every person in this room, from generation to generation. How do we make this place a better place? And how do we make this beautiful state that we're lucky to call our home an even better, stronger, smarter, cleaner, safer state for the next generation? That's our responsibility as citizens, as parents, as stewards of the environment, as New Yorkers. Let's make New York a better place for those who come after us, and together we will. Thank you, and God bless you. Tell me any questions you might have.
Governor, what a great way to start the weekend and celebrate St. Patrick's Day next week. An incredible speech. I'm going to take Chairman's prerogative and ask the first question. You start off about civic responsibility. You had the picture of my dad. I wish you had the picture of your dad, because they worked arm in arm and really set the framework. And Jerry Spire's here, and he remembers who Mr. Bridges is. So, you have a target-rich environment right here. You asked about getting people involved. This audience, our members, want to be involved. They showed their commitment. But specifically, what do you think we should be doing and focusing on, and how do we harness the energy that's in this room?
It's a good question. Going back in the 70s, people understood how important state government was and how vital and how relevant it was. Somewhere along the way, Albany became sleepy and state government became sleepy and people paid less attention to it. And the New York City government became preeminent, and people became very engaged in New York City and lost interest in the state government. We need help in the state government. State government is bigger than the city government. We have very specialized agencies, very specialized tasks. We have boards, we have commissions. We need talented people to serve on the boards and the commissions. And I was only half teasing about John Mack's example. You know, the model, my father, Bill's father, you were great in the private sector, but you also did your public sector duty. And one enhanced the other. And you were a great private citizen, you were a great public citizen. We have economic development boards, visitor boards, housing boards, with literally a desperate need for specific expertise in that area. You don't have to quit your day job. I'd love it if you did quit your day job. But you don't have to quit your day job. We have multiple opportunities for people who just want to serve. It can be fun. All right, take that back. Maybe it's not fun. It can be interesting, and you can learn, and it'll be different, but we need that kind of expertise. It is at a very low ebb compared to what it used to be.
Okay, questions? Dawn. Hold on one second, the microphone's coming to you.
I'm Dawn Barber, and I co-founded New York Tech Meetup. We have over 38,000 technology people as members of our community here in New York. And I applaud you on Startup America, and wanted to ask you what's your perspective on the business community's response to that? And in particular, do you see any actual deal announcements anytime soon?
It's a good question. If I had to categorize the response, it would be disbelief that it's too good to be true. I believe that. I think they think there's a catch somewhere. It can't be that simple. It can't be that straightforward. Because of what we're saying about these zones, by the way, these are the least expensive places in the country to locate a business. Even a no-income state, there are some states with a no-income tax. Even if they have no income tax, they have some other tax because they have to have some other revenue. So they'll have a property tax, sales tax, et cetera. These are the least expensive places in the country. And it's almost incredulous that New York State, high tax, big regulation, New York, to have the least expensive place in the country. So I think they're incredulous. That's why John Mack is so effective. He has a credibility factor here that I don't have, that a politician doesn't have. When John Mack says the numbers are what the numbers are, the numbers are what the numbers are. Boys from North Carolina don't lie about numbers. So he's been extraordinarily helpful in bringing credibility to the program. We have a very large universe. We've been advertising aggressively, and we have thousands of companies that have expressed interest. But the first impression is almost dubious. This is too good to be true. Can it be that good? We're very aggressive in following up on the leads, and I think it has a fundamental transformative capacity for this state. I'm very impressed that the legislature actually passed it, because no state in the nation has ever done this before. It is that aggressive.
Yes, sir.
There's been a lot in the news about your plan to cut property taxes and some opposition to it in the legislature. How would the government consolidation aspect work? And is this the first time it's been tried? Thank you.
Yes, this is one of the cases where the legislature is wrong. It doesn't happen often. Here's what's happening to reduce the property taxes. We passed what's called the property tax cap, which limits to 2% the rate any government can increase their property taxes, with some limitations. So a local government, a village, a town, et cetera, can only raise it 2%. School district can only raise it 2%. But as I said in the presentation, there are so many of them, 10,500, that even if it only goes up 2%, it's still a lot. You have a house in Westchester County, you get a tax bill, you have 14 jurisdictions on your tax bill. And you pay the lighting district and the sewer district, and they're all separate taxing entities, and they're all going up. My plan is we'll offer a freeze to the homeowner where the state will credit and pay the increase year to year for 2 years. So the homeowner is flat for 2 years. If that local government agrees to come up with a savings plan where they save a point over the next 3 years. If the government doesn't agree to save money, we won't give the homeowner the freeze. What I'm trying to do is use democracy, use the homeowner's desire for the freeze to pressure the local government to make cuts. Yes, that's what I'm trying to do. They say you're trying to pressure us. I say, yes, I'm trying to pressure you. That is what I am trying to do. I've been working on this issue for 7 years. I started as Attorney General. They do not want to consolidate, and they do not want to share. Why? Because it's human nature. I want control, and I want everything for myself. And I want to have my own back office and my own fleet operations and one of everything for me. And I get it, but we can't afford it. And we need to get sharing across local governments so that the cost comes down. And they're not going to do it on their own. It's not human nature. And they're not going to do it unless there's significant pressure. I believe that. And the homeowners will exert significant pressure on the localities. They're right about that. The legislators, within their district, they have all these mayors and all these supervisors, and the sewer district is the commissioner is their cousin, and their niece works for the lighting district. So they're getting all this heat from the local officials. And it is significant heat. And they want to say, give the tax freeze without requiring any savings. To me, that defeats the purpose of the freeze. And I understand the heat from the local officials, but really it's an inconvenience to the local officials. The homeowners are the ones who are really getting stressed. And I'm more concerned, frankly, with the homeowners than the bureaucracy. And the legislature's job isn't to protect the bureaucracy. The legislature's job is to be responsible to the taxpayer. And that's the discussion we're having now.
All right, we have time for one more question. Gentlemen. Mr. Jay Kriegel.
It is Mr. Jay Kriegel, isn't it?
Kriegel. He knows who Bridges was.
Who was Earl Bridges? We have a question for you. Who was Earl Bridges?
Where's Bobby Douglas? He knew Earl Bridges. We negotiated with Earl Bridges, and he was very lovely. Niagara Falls.
Is that true?
Absolutely.
See? You're right. He did know Earl Bridges.
Governor, many of us here are concerned about the future of charter schools and are grateful for the support you've expressed in recent days, including this morning. Could you tell us what's likely to happen in the budget with regard to the charter school situation?
In the budget is the maximum point of leverage for almost all sides, the Senate, the Assembly, and the governor, but certainly for the governor. Governor probably has a little bit more leverage than the Assembly or the Senate. I don't like to admit that, but it's probably true. There is the rest of the legislative session that goes on past the budget. The session continues till June. I'm trying to get this done in the budget where we change the law so we know that we have legal protections that will assure that charter schools continue and grow in every city of the state. The way we've now written the law, we give tremendous power to the mayors. And it's possible that a mayor could say, under mayoral control, I don't like charter schools. I'm not going to locate or fund any new charter schools. And it's possible that that whole movement would dry up. I think as a matter of policy, that would be bad for the city. I think it would be bad for the state. I want to make sure the laws are changed so we have those basic protections. I think we can do it in a way that doesn't interfere with mayoral control and respects the concept of mayoral control, but protects charter schools, and I want to get those laws changed in this budget, April 1.
Governor, thank you very, very much. Very inspiring, and again, thank you for your leadership, and thank you all for coming, and have a great weekend. Thanks.
Thank you.